The white-hot Iron Man stood up, got stiffly off his glowing bed and began to walk to and fro on the sand, cooling. He cooled slowly. He went from white to orange, from orange to red, red to black, as he walked, coolly swinging his arms. Now at last he spoke to the monster. "If you can't bear to be made red-hot like me, then you are weaker than I am, and I have won, and you are my slave." The monster began to laugh. "All right," he roared. "Build a fire and I'll lie on it." He laughed again. He knew the Iron Man couldn't build a fire the size of Australia. But then his laugh stopped. The Iron Man was pointing upwards at the sun. "There is the fire for you," he shouted. "You go and lie there. Go and lie on the sun till you are red hot." The monster gazed up at the sun. He felt strangely cold suddenly. But how could he refuse? "All right," and he set off. With slow, giant wing beats, he lifted his immense body off the earth and flew slowly up towards the sun, while the whole earth watched. Slowly, he covered the distance, getting smaller and smaller as he went. At last, he landed. A ragged black shape sprawled across the sun. Everybody watched, and now they saw the monster begin to glow. Blue at first, then red, then orange. Finally, his shape was invisible. The same blazing white as the sun itself. The monster was white-hot on the sun. Then they saw him returning, a blazing shape tearing itself from the sun, off the sun. This shape became red as it flew. It was writhing and growing larger. Slowly, once more, it became the black bat-winged shape of the dragon, flying back to earth, down and down, bigger and bigger, cooling as he came, until bump! He landed, this time much more heavily than before, on Australia. He landed so heavily that all over the world bells tumbled out of church towers and birds' eggs were jarred out of their nests. The monster stared down at the Iron Man. But it was hardly the same monster. His horns drooped. His face was wizened and black. His claws were scorched blunt. His crest flopped over limply, and great ragged holes were burned in his wings. It had been terrible for him on the fires of the sun, but he had done it, and there he was. The fires of the sun are far, far hotter than any fires here on earth can ever be. "There," he roared, "I've done it." The Iron Man nodded, but his answer was to signal to the engineers. Once more they poured oil into the trough under the grid. Once more they lit it. Once more the flames roared up and the black smoke billowed up into the clear blue. And once more the Iron Man stretched himself out on the grid of the raging furnace. The space bat angel dragon watched in horror. He knew what this meant for him. He would have to go once more into the sun's flames. And now the Iron Man's hair and toes and elbows were red hot. He lay back in the flames, smiling up at the dragon, and his whole body was becoming red hot, then orange, and finally white, like the blazing wire inside an electric bulb. At this point the Iron Man was terribly afraid. For what would happen if the flames went on getting fiercer and fiercer? He would melt and drip into the flames like so much treacle and that would be the end of him. So even though he grinned up at the dragon as though he were enjoying the flames, he was not enjoying them at all, and he was very frightened. Even the engineers, who were hiding behind thick asbestos screens over a mile away along the beach, felt the hair singeing on their heads. They too thought it was the end of the Iron Man. Perhaps they had poured in just a bit too much fuel oil. But at that very moment, and the very second that the edge of the Iron Man's ear started to melt, the fuel was used up and the flames died. The engineers came running down the beach. They saw the red-hot Iron Man getting off his fearful bed, and they saw him moving to and fro on the sand, cooling off. At last, the Iron Man looked up at the dragon. He could hardly speak after his ordeal in the flames. Instead, he simply pointed towards the sun and jabbed his finger towards the sun as he gazed up at the monster. "That's twice," he managed to say. "Now it's your turn." The monster did not laugh. He set off up from the earth, beating his colossal wings, writhing his long, ponderous body up into the sky towards the sun. Now it was his turn, and he did not laugh. Last time had been too dreadful. But he went. He couldn't let the Iron Man win. He couldn't let the Iron Man of the Earth beat him in this terrible contest. And so all the telescopes and cameras of the world watched him flying into the sun. They saw him land among the flames, as before. As before, they saw the great ragged shape like an inkblot sprawled over the center of the sun. They saw him begin to glow red and then orange, and at last they could no longer see him. He and the sun were one blinding whiteness. He had done it again, but the sun was burning him up. But was the sun burning him up? Had he melted in the sun? Where was he? No, here he was. Here he came, slowly, slowly, down through space, much more slowly than before. His white, hot, flying body cooled slowly to red as he came, and as he grew larger, coming nearer, he finally became once more black. And the great black shape flagged its way down through space until, bump! Heavier than ever, he landed on Australia. This time the bump was so heavy it knocked down certain skyscrapers, sent tidal waves sweeping into harbours, and threw herds of cows onto their backs. All over the world, anybody who happened to be riding a bicycle at that moment instantly fell off. The space bat angel dragon landed so ponderously because he was exhausted. And now he was a very changed monster. The fires of the sun had worked on him in a way that was awful to see. His wings were only rags of what they had been. His skin was crisped, and all his fatness had been changed by the fires of the sun into precious stones, jewels, emeralds, rubies, turquoises, and substances that had never been found on earth. And when he landed with such a jolt, these loads of precious gems burst through the holes scorched in his skin and scattered down onto the Australian desert beneath. But the Iron Man could not allow himself to pity the space bat angel dragon. He signalled to the engineers. "Round 3, he shouted, and the engineers began to pour the oil. But what was this? Okay, year 4, this is all we're going to go as far as today. I hope you're enjoying the Iron Man. Don't forget to send pictures of your work or emails to Ms. Martin and I on the year 4 email. We miss you very much. Goodbye.